Ark has released 13 content-filled maps over the years, and I've played hundreds to thousands of hours on every single one. In this video, I'll cover 5 of the most important tips for every single map that I've learned throughout the past decade of playing the game. Regardless of how experienced you are, I guarantee you that you'll find some of these tips useful in the future. I included video chapters in the description so you can skip around to the maps you actually enjoy playing. While you're down there, I'd appreciate it a ton if you could subscribe to help me reach 15k. Without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy the info. The island's caves are some of the toughest objectives on the map, and my first tip for the caves is if you're doing the ice or tech cave, consume rare flowers as you're going through. This prevents you from being able to get dismounted by Parlovias, and it's super convenient to avoid this. The only other threat besides the weather conditions for these two caves is the Uranus in the tech cave because it can roar creatures into the lava. As long as you're ready for all of these things, these two caves are a breeze, and they're by far the hardest caves on this map. One more thing for the tech cave, I see a lot of people talking about the timer and how it's annoying that there's a timer in the cave. That timer is only for the cave portion, it's not for the cave plus overseer. If you get through the cave in an hour, which there is plenty of time to do, there's no concern about the timer for the overseer fight. Up next, I have using the baryonyx for every cave on this map besides the last two I just mentioned. There's other solid caving options on this map, but the baryonyx is a great choice for every cave in the game besides the ice cave and the tech cave. The reason I suggest to use the baryonyx for every cave besides those two is because having continuity about what creature you're using for one of the most difficult tasks on the map is really good because you can invest more time into getting a strong breed line of that creature. For the underwater caves, you definitely can use the baryonyx. It's fast, it's able to swim forever because it has unlimited oxygen, but there are some more safe choices because the eels can stun you. The best choices for these caves is probably the Basilosaurus or the Tuzoteuthis. If you have a Basilosaurus, bring a Megalodon or Zipactinus pack with you for extra DPS, but these caves are really a breeze if you're ready. My third tip is killing creatures that are low level, even if you don't do it that much on other maps. The island has notoriously bad creature levels, so cycling out the low level wild creatures gives you more opportunities to finally be given something decent. You can also use the Destroy Wild Dinos command right when you load into a server for the first time. This wipes out all the low levels and gives you a better chance of having some at least somewhat balanced levels when you're playing through the game. My fourth tip is about silica pearls. Silica pearls are pretty spread out on this map besides 12 somewhat hidden underwater caves. On screen now you can see the coordinates to the map location for every single one of these 12 caves. To find these spots, go to the ocean floor and swim up into the small areas to collect the very dense spawns of pearls. I highly recommend using a gas mask in first person or using the r.fog_0 command as well. This improves visibility immensely when you're underwater and it helps you find these pretty hidden spots much easier. Two more small things of note before I move on. Firstly, these silica pearls don't spawn underwater. You have to go onto land to grab them by hand, so bringing an angler down won't get you more pearls. And secondarily, some of these spots are actually really good for base locations. Not all of them have enough room, but the ones that do have a decent amount of space are really good for small tribes. My last tip for this map is to cheese boss fights. I totally understand this tip is not for every type of player. If you want to go through the map like it was intended, I totally get it. No fault to you there. But in my opinion, if you want to progress through this map somewhat efficiently, cheesing the Broodmother boss fight is a really easy way to do it. The way you pull this off is going into the arena with a really good shotgun and a Procoptodon, and once you get in, simply jump up onto the mushroom on the ceiling of the arena and shotgun down the boss. Nothing in this arena can hit you, you have more than enough time to kill this boss, and then you get element, tech engrams, and a lot of XP for beating the boss fight for free. The Gamma version of the boss really gives you everything that you need. It gives you a lot of element, it gives you the replicator engram, and the alpha version does give you the tech turret, but you don't really get any use out of the tech turret until you get the generator anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. You can carry this strategy over to the overseer fight as well. Once you get through the tech cave with whatever means you decide to do it with, simply use your tech chestplate, fly to the roof of the arena, and shoot down the boss. The timer on top of your screen, yet again, will not cancel your fight once it gets to 0, so there's no rush at all. Just kill the drones so you don't die. Up next is Scorched Earth, and my first tip for this map is how to get silica pearls. Silica pearls spawn in most of the shallow rivers, and using a whip is the most efficient way to farm these quickly because the anglers just aren't on this map because the water isn't deep enough. You can't use a whip while you're underwater, so just stay at the edge of the water and whip into the water. If you don't get some of the silica pearls in the middle, go farm those by hand afterwards. One more way you can get silica and black pearls on this map is a phoenix passively farming them. This is a little bit less efficient just because it's pretty slow, but it is an option. And just while I'm on this topic, killing alpha and normal deathworms is the other way to get black pearls on this map. My second tip for Scorched is taming a jerboa and using it the entire time. The jerboa is a really easy knockout berry to him in the early game. It warns you about the 4 weather events that you can see on screen now. It has 4 different animations when it has the 4 upcoming events. You only really need to worry about the sandstorm, but it's nice to know what all 4 mean. And it has the classic shoulder mount perks, which is being a distraction if you need to get away from something and throw it away, weight reduction, and some insulation. It's also just really cute. My third tip for Scorched Earth is farming the low tier drops. Most of Scorched Earth's difficulty comes from the early game and getting screwed by the weather, so getting something like adobe structures out of green drops just saves you so much time and skips so much of the early game struggle. I've noticed that low tier drops on Scorched Earth are just generally more useful than other maps across the entirety of a playthrough, but in the early game especially, do not skip out on these drops. My fourth tip for Scorched Earth is how to navigate the really limited flyer cast. The flyer variety on this map sucks. It's just the Lamatria, Argy, Tapejara, and Wyverns. In my opinion, you want to skip right to the Argy. The Lamatria sucks, it's just not worth your time taming because something like a Percoptodon is far better, and the Tapejara is okay, but it's kind of out of the way. Whether you end up with an Argy or a Tapejara, you want to get a Wyvern as soon as possible. The best way to do this is to simply wait by the Wyvern trench until all the Wyverns migrate away from a certain area, jump down and get any level egg you can and get out. It doesn't matter what the level is, you just need a Wyvern egg. Once you get an egg, you can either use a Daedon to keep healing the Wyvern as it raises so you don't need the milk, or you can go simply get milk and raise it. Once you have your first Wyvern, getting more actually good Wyvern eggs is far easier and is just the best option for this map in terms of mobility by a mile. My last tip is to be aware of the generators and other power structures decaying. These structures decay really frequently on this map, especially when you're offline on non-dedicated servers. For the generator specifically, placing it inside of adobe structures does help regulate the temperature a lot and reduces the decay speed very much. And turning off the generator or wind turbines when you're not using them or you don't need them is a really effective method as well. In a cave like Central Cave, for example, you don't need to worry about the decay. The weather temperature is totally fine and there's no weather events that can hit your stuff, so you're good. The center is up next, and my first tip for this map is all about the underwater bubbles. Underwater bubbles serve two really awesome use cases on this map. First of all, they're just amazing base locations. The aesthetic is great, there's a lot of space, and even though the area isn't defensible for a PvP situation, in PvE there's just so many resources nearby. The other more universal use case for the underwater bubbles is for free underwater taming for any aggressive creature. The way you do this is staying just on the outside of the underwater bubble inside of the water and shooting a creature with a trank. It'll try to get to you, but it can't reach you because you're so close to the bubble, so it's a free knockout every time. Very consistent, very useful. My second tip for the center stays underwater, and this time is to farm underwater, especially in Ark Ascended. The underwater areas of the center have a ton of metal, oil, and some other resources, so having the Dunkleostis ready to go is super worth it. The optimal method is bringing multiple Dunkleostis that have a bunch of weight pumped into them, and then bringing a pack of Megalodons or Zifactinus to protect you. The reason you pump weight instead of melee damage for Dunkleostis specifically is because the melee damage is already good enough, you get a ton of metal per rock, and having more weight lets your runs be longer and you get more metal overall. Making less trips, especially for underwater farming, is far more valuable than getting more per swing. My third and fourth tips for the center both revolve around the jumping puzzle cave at 52.6, 53.9 in the underworld. In my opinion, this is the hardest cave on the map just because it's the highest risk. If you fall off, you're just going to die in the lava. In Ark Survival Ascended, the cave is pretty easy because you can bring in creatures like a Thylacoleo, Megalania, or Pyromane to just get the artifact of the pack super easily in the back of the cave because you can just climb or jump up to skip it. In Ark Survival Evolved, though, you can't really bring any creature that can climb, jump super high, or use grappling hooks in the cave, so you can't skip it because they inflict a ton of damage onto your climbing creatures and the grapples just don't work. In the background of this clip, you see me running through the artifact of the pack cave on foot. This is very easily replicatable. If you have a little bit of movement speed, the cave becomes a ton easier. In Ascended, just use a Pyromane, it's immune to the lava anyway, or use a Thylacoleo or Megalania to climb around. Building off that last point, if you want to get more value out of the cave than just getting the artifact, which I do highly recommend by the way because this cave has the best drops on the map by far, there's multiple red drops in here every time you run it, you're going to want to run through the actual cave. If you're in Ascended, use a Pyromane, Thylacoleo, or just do it on foot like I'm showing you on screen, and in Evolved, replicate exactly what I'm doing on screen. Bring one parachute so you can skip this pretty difficult section that doesn't have any drops in it, and the rest is a breeze. I will say to try out this cave in single player first, just to get the feel of it at least once before you go into an actual server with your good stuff, but after you do practice it, it's super easy. This cave easily gives you the highest quality drops compared to the amount of time you need to spend to get them. It's very fast to run through this cave once you get used to it. There's 3 red drops every time, and the drops have really high quality loot. My fifth tip for this map is looting the bear caves for the insane amounts of metal, crystal, and the dire bear spawns. The center is known for having really high level wild creature spawns, so it's not going to take you very long to find a max level dire bear or two. This is a really strong creature, so it's very worthwhile. Some of the bear caves are decent base spots in PvP, but in my opinion, it's really not worth building here because there's so many better options like the Pearl Cave and the North Ice Cave, which are some of the best caves in the game. On screen now are the coordinates for every single bear cave on the map. They definitely vary in quality based on the size, the amount of resources, and the amount of bears spawning in them, but they're all worth checking out at least once. Up next is Aberration, and my first tip for this map is in the late game using dire bears to get a ton of polymer. Aberrant dire bears can farm tens of thousands of polymer like I'm showing you on screen now in the radiation/red zone. It will not take damage due to them being native to Aberration. You can also use normal dire bears for this, but you need to use mushroom soup with it to give it a temporary 2-minute immunity to the radiation every 2 minutes so you don't die. The mushroom soup item is just really good in general. It gives you a 2-minute radiation resistance, and it gives your creatures a 2-minute radiation resistance whenever you may need that. You need to feed it to your creatures though, so you do need to make a lot of this. It's very cheap though, you can see the recipe on screen. Karkinos are also really good to farm for polymer, but it's just nowhere near as good as this. It's pretty much the best method of farming polymer in the entire game. Up next, I have the best tames you should go for to progress through Aberration easily. The first goal for progressing is to get mobility. Try to get a fast tame before all else. Something like a Yeeling, Spino, or Ravager is the best choice in my opinion. Once you get one of these creatures, go grab a light pet for yourself and then get straight to the blue zone to get Megalosaurus. The Megalosaurus is extremely strong, can kill basically anything on the map if you have a couple or if you just have it imprinted, and it's very easy to tame because it's all over the blue zone. The Megalosaurus is great for killing basically anything, going deep into the red zone to grab rock drakes, get reapers low on HP so you can get impregnated, and it's even a great bring in the boss fight because it can kill basically anything in the arena. My third tip is to take advantage of the lamprey. The lamprey has the ability to give you a temporary radiation resistance whenever you get hit by it, and this is useful for a couple of different applications. On screen now you can see every location the lamprey spawns on the map. There's a couple of ways to take advantage of this ability, but the best way is probably just to go get red gems on the outskirts of the red zone when you don't have a hazard suit yet. The other thing you can do, which is a bit more complicated, is get hit by the lamprey in the blue zone, go into the red zone, and get a new lamprey onto you, and then go get rock drakes even deeper in the zone. You can also use this to go get something like reapers, but if you want to get impregnated by one, just drag the reaper out of the red zone into the blue zone. You really don't want to be on that much of a timer when you're trying to get impregnated. My fourth tip also happens in the red zone, and this time it's how to get black pearls most effectively. In the deep red zone, there's black pearl nodes that look similar to retextured silica pearl nodes, but just darker all around the Element River. If you're allowing transfers onto the server, you could use a whip to farm these. If you aren't, just farm them by hand. Either way, after you get all the black pearls you want to farm, go to the Rockwell terminal and upload them. The reason you're uploading them is because they're super heavy, so after you upload them, go back to the green zone to a drop that's really close by your base, and then take them back out of the terminal there. This saves a ton of time and is very efficient. You can also use this method to just get more black pearls than you would normally be able to carry. If you're over encumbered with some, just upload half of them so you can go get more with your trip. Farming these black pearls is really out of the way, so you would like to get all of them in one trip so you don't have to make multiple dives down into the deep red zone. My last tip for Aberration is tracking the day-night cycles for drop farming. Aberration's surface biome works on a day-night cycle rotation, and it has 3 different cycles: the 10% night, 50% night, and 90% night. The reason this matters is the surface has 3 very valuable things you can go up there for, and it only is accessible during the nighttime because during the day it'll just burn you alive. The surface is the best place on the map to farm drops by a mile, it's the best place to go find Alpha Reaper Kings for the Alpha Boss Tribute, and it holds the Phaslosuchus creature, which is really good to tame for flint farming. On screen now you can see the exact times of day that it's nighttime during the 50% and 90% night cycle. I don't recommend going over there during the 10% because there's just not enough of a window for it to be worth your time. To see what day-night cycle it is, you can either press H or toggle the extended HUD and see it in the top left, or just look at your map. To see what time it is in game, just go into your inventory, it shows up in the middle. And the last thing to mention for this is it does work in a similar cycle every single time. There's 3 days for 50%, then 3 days for 90%, and then 3 days for 10%. The next map I'll talk about is Extinction, and the first tip is to use the gas bags plus Dreadmare farming combo if you have the Dreadmare. This combination is disgustingly good. The gas bags has really good mobility, is very tanky, and has fantastic weight, and the Dreadmare has the black hole ability which combos great with it. The reason it combos so well with the gas bags is that it doesn't carry over the weight that's on the creature, and the creature that gets black holed keeps its inventory while it's getting transported by the Dreadmare. The The Dreadmare's black hole functions off of the drag weight of a creature. The drag weight is a totally different metric than the actual current weight on a creature, so it's perfect for the gas bags because the gas bags doesn't have a crazy high drag weight and it can carry a ton on its inventory. You basically want to go out, farm, collect all the resources or the loot drops that you get, put them all into the gas bags, which can hold all of it to the point where the gas bags is encumbered, and then put the gas bags in the black hole of the Dreadmare and then fly around with no encumbering. My second tip for this map is using alternative farming methods to the normal maps. Extinction's resource collecting methods are not the same as every other map, so you shouldn't treat it like they are. For example, going around the sanctuary and using the Doedicurus to farm all the pre-built structures that are there for metal, crystal, electronics, and element dust is far better than using an Anki. Using a bio grinder to grind down tech creatures or just going around and killing tech creatures to farm is very viable as well. The creation of automatic farms for gotchas and for tech creatures with a bio grinder is basically a must-do. The map is just very different than every other map in the game. I absolutely recommend you look into this because there's so many great ways to get resources on Extinction that aren't available on any other map. My third tip is not depending solely on the OSDs for loot drops. Extinction's OSDs are very solid for loot, modifiers, and experience, but killing the Desert Titan is also a really great choice. On screen now you can see the entire loot table of drops from the Desert Titan. It gives you pretty high qualities of these items, and the boss has a bonus of also giving you early access tech engrams. Summoning the boss is also really easy. You need to do a little bit of grinding for the tributes, but the cave is very easy with a Megatherium or a Mana Garmer, and once you get to the boss fight itself, it's a total joke. Simply put a Giga on the back of a Quetzal platform saddle and go up and bite the boss in the back. It is so easy to beat this boss, the loot is really good, and if you don't want to put all the effort in for the Quetzal and Giga, just sit on the ground and shoot it with a mech. Don't get me wrong, the OSDs are still really worth doing, they're very good, they give great drops, but don't write off the Desert Titan, even if it's just for the tech engram unlocks, it's worth it. My fourth tip is using ordering groups, especially for the King Titan fight. Using ordering groups basically prevents you from sending your entire army in at once during boss fights, and on this map specifically where certain bosses can just 3-shot your army, this is helpful. This is much more applicable to Ark Survival Evolved because in Ark Ascended you can just use the Dreadnoughtus, which you just do send in all at once because it has over 100,000 HP and is super strong. But in Ark Evolved where you're using something like a Giga for the fight, it's much better to spread them out because if they all die at once, you're screwed. My last tip for this map is actually optimally setting up the gotchas and not just taming them and calling it a day. There's 3 things at minimum you should always do with gotcha farms. First, you want snow owls near your gotchas so you can get pellets into your gotchas at all times passively without you having to put them in manually. Second, you want to space out your gotchas properly so they can be happy and produce crystals at a much higher rate. Spreading them out by 12 tiles in Evolved and 10 tiles in Ascended is enough to accomplish this. And lastly, in Ark Survival Ascended, you want to have Pegomastics near your gotchas as well so you can passively grab the crystals once they're produced. There's other things you can do to optimize gotcha farms more, but these are really basic things you can do that everybody should implement when they have gotchas. The first Astraeos tip I have is getting a Meguana as soon as physically possible. The Meguana is just insanely overpowered. It's basically the Maywing. It offers really great movement in horizontal and vertical directions. It's great on land and in water. It gives you good utility later in the game with breeding as well, so you're always going to need one. And this map is just huge and contains a ton of water and land, so there's no reason not to go for this. On screen now are all the spawn regions for the Meguana. My recommendation is just getting a couple of billboards, trapping one as soon as physically possible, knocking it out, and being much better off for the rest of your playthrough. My second tip for Astraeos is abusing Ovis Island. Ovis Island is at 4152 on the map. It's out in the middle of the ocean, so you might not know it exists, but it is so useful. Having unlimited mutton and access to mutton whenever you need it is really helpful for crafting kibbles, taming whatever creature you could possibly need. It's just a really nice utility thing. Getting unlimited pelt is also a really helpful thing. This map doesn't have too many cold areas yet, but they're planning on adding more of those in the near future, so this will be helpful too. It's out in the middle of the open, so a lot of people don't know it exists. The entire tip is just know it exists and take advantage of it. My third tip for Astraeos is downloading the map exclusive mods. Astraeos' official map release doesn't include map specific content that makes the map stand out. The first mod is called Astraeos' Mythological Creatures. This mod introduces 3 custom creatures, the Minotaur, Seahorse, and Cyclops. The other mod is called Astraeos Trireme Ships, which introduces ships that are absolutely awesome. The aesthetic of the ships is amazing, and the map is filled with water. It's literally made for these ships. One more feature of the ships that I really like is that they're immune to lead sickness, which is so nice. These mods are available for both PC and console, and I just recommend them highly. It just makes the map so much better. Both of these mods are also linked in the description of this video, and they're in the Ark resources chat on my Discord server. My Discord server also has updates on everything I'm doing in my channel, and I also use my Discord server to answer a ton of questions about the game, just talk about Ark in general, other survival games. There's a lot of cool people in there. I'd really appreciate it if you checked it out. It's down in the description in the first link. My fourth tip is utilizing the teleportation system. Astraeos has a biome teleportation system which lets you travel around the map with ease. The map is huge, so this is a really nice feature to have, and I actually didn't know this map had that until I saw it when I was researching for this video. It functions the exact same as Helena works on Genesis 1 and how it works on Fjordur. You just use the set key. In PC's example, it's R. I'm not sure what it is on console. Using the set key will open up a wheel which gives you options to teleport to different sections of the map, and it'll take you and any nearby creatures with you and keep your inventories. One more way you can take advantage of this system is putting your base very close to one of the landing spots for the teleporting. This way, when you teleport out to get resources in a certain area or to go get loot or whatever you're doing, you can teleport back in and be really close to your base. My fifth and final tip for Astraeos is farming the dead megalodon corpses that are on the beach for oil and spoiled meat. The megalodon corpses are just all over the place on the map in pretty much every beach, and the reason these are really good to farm is a lot of Astraeos servers that I've seen are blocking oil spawns. This is because a lot of this map's resources are very condensed into one area and there's not multiple places you can farm them, so alpha tribes can block certain spots and be really annoying with it. On top of being a really good way to avoid this chokehold of not being able to get oil, these corpses also give a ton of spoiled meat, which is super helpful in the early game for getting early game narcotics. They're also just very useful if you're in the early game and can't get down to the oil spawns yet, or you're not very close to the major oil spawns. It's just a really decent alternative. It gives you a lot of oil for how easy it is to farm, and I highly recommend it. Up next is Ragnarok, and my first tip for this map is to rotationally farm. What I mean by rotationally farming is consistently making runs around the map in a clockwise or counterclockwise rotation to get a lot of value from what the map gives you. Consistently cycling through cementing paste, wyvern eggs, desert drops, and even the black pearl spawns off the beaches can be worth it, and I think all of these are worth doing. My recommendation for doing these rotations is getting a griffin. The griffin is simply the fastest flyer on the map if you use the dive optimally, and it makes getting wyvern eggs really easy too. This griffin should probably have a little bit of weight pumped just so it can carry those heavier black pearls and drops from the desert drops. You can also pick and choose what you need. For example, if you have a lot of wyvern eggs and you're already breeding a line of them, you don't need to go get more wyvern eggs, but it is a good idea at the start of the game. I would recommend doing these runs every hour to 2 hours. It's just dependent on what you actually need. If you just need the desert drops, if you just need the black pearls, you can do these runs every 30 minutes. If you want to get all 4 of the things I mentioned, including the beaver dams and the wyvern eggs as well, you're probably going to have to wait about an hour for the wyvern eggs and the beaver dams to all respawn. In the background of this entire section, I showed how you should rotate through the map. I'll show it on screen on the map right now too, where all the pinpoints are for where you want to stop by. There's 3 beaver dam locations, 2 wyvern egg locations, 1 good black pearl location, and there's 4 desert drops. My second tip is getting wyverns as early as possible. Getting wyverns on Ragnarok is a lot easier than it is on Scorched Earth. You can literally spawn on the beach, tame a pteranodon, get a saddle on it, and then go get a wyvern egg within 20 minutes of playing the game. I don't recommend doing this. I recommend spawning in Viking Bay and then going over here later and getting the eggs, but I'll get to that later. The point is, once you get into the trench and steal an egg, simply go out back to the highlands and fly under a Bronto's legs. This will switch aggro from the wyverns onto the Bronto, and you're good to fly away. It is easy, it is foolproof. There's a ton of Bronto spawning in the highlands all the time. You're not going to have trouble finding any, and then you have yourself free wyvern eggs. My third tip for this map is farming the lava golem cave. The entrance to this cave is at 18.7, 27.8, and the drops and the mini boss drops are really good, and they're pretty easily accessible too. I recommend bringing a couple of grappling hooks, a couple of parachutes, upgrading your movement speed if you're in Ark Evolved, and using the grass.sizescale_0 command if you're in Ark Ascended. The reason this command works really well in Ascended, I'm assuming, is because there's grass blocking the pressure plates so you can't see them at the start of the cave, so using this command will remove this grass. Yet again, this is speculative because the map hasn't come out, but I'm almost certain this is going to work. I'm not going to get into the specifics of how to beat this cave. There's guides online for it. Just be careful of the choke points if you're playing PvP, and if you enable transfers, a Volanosaur is a really great way to kill the boss. To actually get the loot from the boss, you need to go land on the boss's hitbox because it's down in the lava and collect the items off the inventory. The lava is an instant kill throughout the entire cave, so be careful with parachutes and grapples. Going back to the Viking base stuff I was talking about earlier, there's tons of metal tools and swords in crates on the beach, which you can progress really quickly in the early game by using. I recommend starting in Viking Bay to get these metal tools really early. It's just a really nice early quality of life thing. You can get swords, pickaxes, and axes from this. I would recommend using this early start to go get a Pteranodon and then go get Wyvern eggs ASAP. My fifth and final tip for this map is taking advantage of the really easily accessible black pearls. If you want really easy black pearls on any map, transferring to Ragnarok is the way to go. At 70-20 off the west spawn points, there's a ton of black pearls that are extremely easy to get. You can literally spawn with nothing, jump in the water, farm hundreds of black pearls with ease, and then leave. This is very useful regardless of the map that you're playing on, but obviously it's also useful on Ragnarok. It's so easy to get these black pearls that I actually included it earlier in the section when I was talking about the rotational farming. If you have the griffin and you're going around the map, just jump off the griffin when you're on top of the black pearls, farm them, and then grapple back up to the griffin to get out of the water. You can also bring flippers. This makes the process a lot faster, but it's not necessary. Up next is Valguero, and my first tip is to not rush getting Deinonychus. Don't get me wrong, I love the Deinonychus and I think it's a great creature, it's super fun to use and it has a lot of great use cases, but it's just not worth going for in the immediate early game. Whenever I see people play Valguero, they spawn in the chalk hills, they try to rush Deinonychus eggs when they don't have that much gear, and they just die a ton of times. In my opinion, it's much more worth focusing on getting something like a Pteranodon or another flyer, getting a bit of gear set up, getting some armor, some tools, some weapons, and then once you're more kitted out, then you go for the Deinonychus eggs and then you get the perks of having them. My second tip is all about map knowledge, and it's knowing that there's deep underwater zones and an aberration zone. I remember the first time that I played through Valguero, I literally didn't know there was a deep underwater zone for about 50 hours of gameplay because it's just so hidden. Knowing these two zones exist makes the map a lot more fun just because it gives you a lot more potential in what you can do during a playthrough, and in PvP, the Aberration Zone is just really meta viable. The easiest to see entrance for the Aberration Zone is at 38.3, 57.8. Be careful when you're entering here, it will dismount you off your flyer, so if you're flying in there, it dismounts you, you can just die and lose your stuff. My recommendation is just entering on foot, using something like a Deinonychus that can climb you out in case you do fall down. It's much easier this way. To access the deep underwater area the easiest, just go to the waterfall cave at 32.9. The water here goes down into the deep underwater zone. Just to clarify yet again, there are multiple entrances for both of these areas, but these are the ones that I most commonly use because they're just really easy to see. My next tip for this map is building near the beaver dams because it's just a really useful area to have a base. The beaver dam area I'm talking about is at 55.72.5. It's very close to the chalk hills, has a lot of other resource spawns nearby on the hills, and of course, there's beaver dams right next to you, so you have unlimited cementing paste. There's also beaver dams at 38.15, but this area has more spread out beaver dams. There's not as many here from my experience, and the area is just a lot worse. There's not as many surrounding resources, the chalk hills aren't anywhere nearby, and it's more dangerous. My fourth tip is utilizing the waterfall cave at 35.5, 51.3. This cave is just ridiculous. It spawns an insane amount of metal and crystal. The spawns are super densely compact, so it's really easy to farm, and it's very central to the map, so basically wherever you're building, this is a good spot to visit. The hardest cave on Valguero is unquestionably the spider cave at 73.4, 41.5. The reason it's so difficult is because it has both a mini boss, an underwater area, poison, and just a ton of enemies. Luckily for you, you can easily kill the broodmother in the front of the cave because there's a bunch of spiders around with 1 or 2 megatheriums that are decently imprinted, and you can run the entire cave with the Deinonychus. You can also use Deinonychus for the broodmother. It's not as good as the megatherium, but it's still really solid. You also obviously need a gas mask for the poison, but besides that, the cave is pretty easy. You can follow the glowing mushrooms, it's pretty linear in terms of how you can get through it, and you do definitely need to run this cave because it has 2 artifacts. Up next is Crystal Isles, and my first tip for this map is just getting a Crystal Wyvern on the beaches as soon as possible. The hardest part about getting a Crystal Wyvern on this map is just getting to level 65 so you can actually tame one. My recommendation is just farming, crafting a bunch of cooking pots and rafts in the early game, or just transferring your character over after you do a no run on the island. After you follow my first tip, stealing wyvern eggs is a breeze. Using a tropical crystal wyvern's speed when it hits the water with its wings gets you away from any high level wyvern with no problem. The high level wyvern eggs are good to go for because it's simply better than the wild ones you can tame. The eggs are all in the area of 75.5, 43.1. This is also a really great way to get the blood crystal wyvern, which is by far the best out of the 3 wyverns because it has lifesteal. Just super worth doing, super easy to pull off in the really early game, and I highly recommend it. My third tip for this map is taking advantage of the fact that Karkinos spawn on the floating islands. Karkinos are incredibly useful for two reasons. First, in the wild, when you kill them and harvest them with a chainsaw, they're really good because they give you a ton of organic polymer and chitin, which can be used to make unlimited cementing paste. Secondly, they're really good as a tame because when you're using them to farm, you can just throw around your harvesting creatures and not have to worry about weight. My fourth tip for this map is not overrating the boss fight. The Crystal Wyvern Queen is a pretty easy boss. It's a flying boss, so its stats aren't great, and you can bring flyers into the arena yourself. The boss is actually so easy that you can just bring in some pretty strong mutated Argies and whoop it, or you can just bring in a Blood Wyvern army, which is even better and gives you lifesteal on top of being really strong. I recommend the Blood Crystal Wyverns. It's just the easiest way to fight this boss by far, but Argies, or even just other types of Crystal Wyverns like the Tropical or Ember ones, will work just fine. My last tip is to use the bee cave. Almost every resource on this map is abundant, but honey and early game polymer are pretty tough to come by. Unless you know about the bee cave that's at 20-25 in the redwoods. Obviously, late game polymer and chitin farming for cementing paste can be gotten from the Karkinos farming on the floating islands, but in the early game, simply go to the bee cave, farm these hives. It's really good value, it's super easily accessible, and honey throughout the early, mid, and late game is really good because it helps in crafting extraordinary kibble, and it's useful for certain tames like the Dire Bear and the Megatherium. Up next is Genesis 1, and this is easily the hardest map in the game, but there is some advice I can give you to make it a little bit easier. First is how to start out. My recommendation is completely skipping the bog biome. I know it says the bog biome is easy, they are lying. Start in the ocean biome, get a good amount of gear, get your character leveled up a little bit, and just get your footing. The ocean biome is easily the safest biome on the map, there's not many threats, and you can swim around really quickly and get easy access to resources. After you get your start in the ocean biome, transfer to the west portion of the snow biome and build up there. The snow biome contains a ton of really useful resources, some great tames, and it's still safer than the easy bog biome. I think the west snow biome is probably the best area on the map to build for a majority of the game. It's not too cold, so it's pretty bearable, and everything around it is just very solid. My second tip is how to deal with the lunar biome if, for some reason, your hazard breaks or something is going wrong. The Genesis 1 lunar biome is arguably the hardest biome in the game to survive on, so if something is going wrong, get out of the biome before you overstay your welcome. There's two main ways to counter something not going to plan in the lunar biome. First of all, you can just teleport out of the biome a lot of the time, but if you're not able to do that, get into a cave as soon as you can. The caves have better temperature insulation, you're not exposed to the sun's radiation, so you're not taking radiation damage, and this will just give you a second to reset, get your plan in order, or get out of the biome. The main threats in these caves is Seekers, so as long as you're ready to deal with a couple of Seekers with a shotgun or some other weapon, you're good to stay in here for a little bit. My third tip is getting Bloodstalkers as fast as physically possible. Bloodstalkers are really easy to tame once you're prepared with the blood bags, but getting the blood bags does take a while. My recommendation to most consistently get a Bloodstalker in the early game is as you're playing through the ocean and the west snow biome like I said earlier, just consistently hit yourself with a syringe whenever the cooldown is done. Once you have a couple more blood bags than Dododeck says you need for an 150 level Bloodstalker on the race that you're playing on, leave them in a refrigerator and then go to the bog biome with only your gear. The reason you don't want to bring the blood bags with you when you go to the bog for the first time is just in case you end up dying, you really don't want to have to farm up those blood bags again. It takes hours with the cooldown to get enough to tame a Bloodstalker. Once you're in the bog with just your gear, go find a good level Bloodstalker, and then once you find it, then you go back to your base, get the blood bags, and then go tame it. My fourth tip for this map is about mission selection. On Genesis 1, there's a ton of really great missions. My personal favorite early game mission is Wave Ray 64. I like this mission because it's easy, very accessible, and can be cycled through very quickly on alpha difficulty in the ocean biome. In the late game, there's a ton of great options as well. I personally run through the Bog Gauntlet on alpha. This mission is called Bog Beatdown, and it's the easiest gauntlet by far. All the gauntlets, including Bog Beatdown, give ridiculously good rewards. They do take a while. The Bog Beatdown takes about 30 to 35 minutes on average for me on alpha difficulty, but the rewards are incredible and it's really fun to run through. Missions give both hexagons and loot drops, so when you're deciding what missions you want to do, look through the rewards for both hexagons and loot drops. Don't just look at one or the other because they're both very important. My last tip for this map is how to fight Motor. Motor's a very unique boss because it's the only underwater boss in the game. This requires unique preparation, and in my opinion, the solution is really simple. Bring a couple of tanks to send at the boss at all times, and bring a bunch of damagers to back them up. The strategy may change in Ark Survival Ascended slightly because the Ziph-Actinus can inflict bleed, but I'm not sure if it can inflict bleed onto bosses yet, so once we find out that information, then we'll know. Currently, the best strategy is just bringing a couple of Basilosaurs with insane HP pools and back them up with a lot of high damaging Mosasaurs. The reason you don't bring Tuzos to tank is because the arena bubble for transporting into the boss arena is pretty small, so having a lot of Tuzos in there makes it hard to fit all your creatures. Next up is Genesis 2, and my first tip for this map is how to use the tech suit. Gen 2 is a really fun map if you understand how to move around with the tech suit optimally, and the best thing you need to learn is how to retain momentum. Basically, when you use a tech punch with the tech gauntlets, what you want to do mid-momentum as you're flying forward is open your map. This will basically catapult you forward. It's really good for changing direction when you're in the air with the tech suit, and it's much better than just using normal tech suit mobility without using the punches. If you're just flying in a straight line, just use the punch with the map once to get into momentum and then use the normal flying mechanics. If you're changing directions, use this every time. My second piece of advice is getting a Reaper off rip. It's definitely finicky, it'll take a couple of tries, but getting a Reaper right off the start of a playthrough is super helpful. You can do this incredibly easily on Genesis 2 by going down into the Rockwell zone on the left side of the map. On screen now you can see where Reapers spawn on the map. Once you're in the Rockwell zone, just drag a Reaper down into the acid, get it low on HP, use your Helena scans to see how much HP it has left. Once it's able to impregnate you, drag it out of the acid, get impregnated by it, and then get your levels up and then get a Reaper. My third tip is all about the Shadow Main. Taming Shadow Mains is insanely obnoxious. On screen now is their spawn location on Genesis 2. Using a ghillie suit or cactus broth can work, but the AI is just horrendous. I suggest catching a bunch of fish, killing all the Shadow Mains that you don't want to tame in the area, and then trapping the one you want in a 2x2 stone box. To do this, you'll need stone ramps outside of the box. Once the Shadow Main is trapped, fly out of range, get the aggro removed, and then go back into range with ghillie or cactus broth. The reason you want to trap it is because the Shadow Main can only sleep between 8 and 22, so there is a big window where it doesn't go to sleep, so you can't tame it. Trapping it will make sure you secure the tame in the long run, which is super helpful. The creature is super strong, so I would definitely recommend putting in the effort. My fourth tip on this map is paying attention to the lunar biome's resource rotation. On Genesis 2, the loot drop color reflects what's currently in the lunar biome. At 12:30 PM in every in-game day, the ship takes 15 in-game minutes to hyperspace jump to a new planet. With each jump, the space biome changes. Here's the breakdown of every drop's color by resource. Blue drops mean there's sulfur and obsidian, orange drops means there's black pearls and mutagel, white drops means there's ambergris and mutagel, red drops means there's oil, yellow drops means there's gems and obsidian, green drops means there's crystal, purple drops means there's element and element shards, and cyan means there's element and dust. The last tip for this map will also be about missions, just like I did for Gen 1. In my opinion, early game missions on Gen 2 are just not worth farming. There's no mission that's super fast, easy, and rewards decent loot. The best early game mission is probably Slipstream Sweep. It's very fun to do because of the tech hover sale, and the rewards are okay, but it's just not great. It's pretty easy to do on alpha difficulty once you get used to it, so you do get a decent amount of hexagons, but the loot just doesn't hold up. The best mission on this map by far though is Velonosaur Stock. If you have a decent Giga, this mission is easy and it gives incredibly good loot and a ton of hexagons while being really easy and quick to complete. This mission is worth farming for hours on end, and luckily it isn't super boring because you get to maul things repeatedly with a Giga. Another method for beating this mission is just netting everything, but the Giga is faster to farm with, especially considering how many times you'll end up running this mission. Up next is Lost Island, and in my opinion, the most important thing on this map is getting mobility creatures as soon as possible. The two creatures you should be targeting are the Cinemacrops and the Maywing. On screen now you can see the spawn locations for both. The Cinemacrops is basically a mini jetpack, and it makes the map so much easier and way more fun to play. I'd get the Cinemacrops first and then go to the Plains biome and get the Maywing after that. Take advantage of the surplus of Ovis that are in the Plains biome for the taming of the Maywing, and then after you have these two creatures, you're going to be moving around the map as fast as physically possible. It is just awesome having these two. The map is huge, so it's really important to be able to move around quickly, and the early game on Lost Island is pretty tough because of the high spawns on the beaches. So once you're able to take flight with these two creatures, the game gets a lot easier, way more fun, and the map becomes a lot less annoying. My second tip is more PvE focused, but it's taking advantage of the pre-built castle structures around the map for good base spots. There's a couple of these pre-built structures across the map. They're really easily fortifiable, they're accessible, they're in decent locations compared to surrounding resources, and especially in the early game, it's really good to not have to worry about your creatures being in danger. They also have a surprisingly good amount of space in them. That's a big concern for a lot of these pre-built structure bases on other maps. Lost Island doesn't have this issue. In PvP, you'd obviously rather build in a crouch cave, but for PvE purposes, it's pretty good. My third tip is taking advantage of the huge creature variety on this map. A lot of people play through this map and don't realize there's certain creatures here. Lost Island has almost everything. Just go online and look at the creature list for this map to find out what you're missing. Some overpowered creatures like Magmasaurs and Managarmers are kind of out of the way, so it's worth taking the extra time to research about the map's insane variety. This also applies to the engram list. This map has every single engram in the game. Make sure to take advantage of this fact. My fourth tip for this map is looting the desert cave at 92.4, 80.4 for incredibly easy access to OP drops. This point is very simple. It's the best place in the map to get drops. It's really easy to find, and I already gave you the coordinates, so go get some loot. My fifth tip for Lost Island is making sure to look over the labyrinth caves before you go into them. They're very dangerous if you're not prepared. This map has some kind of ridiculous caves inside of them. They're insanely dangerous. They're very maze-like, so it's pretty hard to find where you're going sometimes. It's kind of like Ragnarok. You're not really going to be able to wing it when you go into the caves. It's better to look it up beforehand. Some caves are difficult, some caves are easy. There's no reason to take the risk. The caves are very, very fun, even if you're prepared. And last, but certainly not least, is Fjordur. My first tip for Fjordur is similar to Ragnarok's Viking Bay, and it's using the shipwrecks on the beach. On screen now is a map of every single shipwreck spawn, with the ocean and the beach ones included. Just look for the ones that aren't in the water. Those are the really easily accessible ones. I think all the Vardaland and Vanaheim spawn locations are pretty close to at least one of these crates, so it's pretty much up to you where you want to go. These crates contain early game resources like metal and helpful tools that you can use, so it's yet again just a great thing to do in the early game. My second tip for this map is being very careful when you're fighting Fenrir Sulfur, the final boss. This boss can kill you off the back of your mount with the wolf projectile that it shoots out, and it's pretty strong in general, summoning Fenrirs and having multiple abilities with great stats, so just be careful. My recommendation to beat it most effectively is use an army of Shadow Mains. The arena has water in it, so your Shadow Mains will get the hydrated buff, and these are just really strong creatures. To find Shadow Mains in Fjordur, you need to go to the Asgard region in the Purple Trees biome. The coordinates to this biome are 63.8, 45.3. My third tip is to farm lower tiers of bosses for really high quality gear and great XP. In my opinion, the easiest low tier boss on this map to farm is Bela by a pretty wide margin. The stats are just not that good, and you have so many different ways you can fight it in the early game and mid game. Bela drops a lot of really great items and gives your creatures and yourself a ton of XP, so I think fighting it throughout the entirety of your progression is very helpful. On screen now you can see the loot tables for Bela. It's just a no-brainer. On Fjordur, there's not really many great spots to farm drops on normal drop run pathing, so I think this is the best choice. Not to mention the boss also gives you a small amount of element, which is nice to get. My fourth tip is pumping way more fortitude than you usually would. On this map, high fortitude is just necessary. Areas like Jotunheim especially are just brutal if you don't have a lot of fortitude points. This map is pretty easy in PvE, so if you're playing that mode, just pump a bunch of fortitude. In PvP, I'd recommend still having a lot of fortitude if you're building in Jotunheim. If you're not building in Jotunheim, you really don't need to worry about it as much in PvP. You can of course also just get really good fur and bring something like a dire bear or an otter to help you get insulated, but in my opinion, just pumping fortitude is a lot easier on this map. If you get to the point where you have enough gear and creatures to deal with the cold, then just use a mind wipe and put more points into other stuff later in your gameplay. My last tip is kind of a Fjordur specific tip, and it's also just a general tip that you can use on Fjordur. Fjordur is the place to go if you're trying to level up a chibi. Chibis level up from killing alpha creatures, and Fjordur is the best map in the game to level up chibis by a mile because it just has so many alpha creatures on it. Even if you're playing through another map, get a chibi, transfer to Fjordur, max out that chibi, and then go back to the map you're playing on. The chibi is nice, it gives you some extra levels on top of your max level, and it's just really cute. Well, that's my tips for every single map inside of Ark. Shout out to all my amazing members. You help make these videos possible, and I really appreciate you. If you enjoyed these tips and want to see some input on what map I think you should play next, click the video on screen now where I ranked all of Ark's maps from worst to best. See you there. Peace!